So just understand that it's going to happen. You're not going to be perfect in the choices you make, particularly early, that some jobs are really going to bore you to hell. And you're going to have very little, probably, excitement, but you have promise, and you have what we call, you have a lot of runway. You can change anything in your career after the time of 30. You know, you're like, you can make a few, you get to 30, then you might start, but you got a lot of great time here to experiment and to choose. And you'll make some good choices and bad choices and enjoy it. I'm going to, a couple of side notes here, and then I'm going to go, but the two things I have learned that I think are very important and they will serve you well. One is humility, and it's a quality seriously lacking in our culture. And when you see it, it's rare. But the consequences of acting without it can be enormous. Most successes that we see, real success, seems to actually involve a lot of humility, and real failure seems to derive from the complete lack of it. And I would just tell you that when you meet special people who are very successful, who are very humble, they teach you more than you can imagine. And that those people are in the world. So I would encourage you that if you're the smartest dude in town and you've got great potential, great connections, and you're going to do it humbly. You have a choice, you know, and if given the choice between making it all about you and being humble about the way you do it, I go with the latter. And finally, and in closing, is that the other thing that when you pick up the paper every day, you will see this thing called integrity. Usually if it's in the newspaper, it's the lack of it. And it's the most important thing you have in your whole career, the most important. At the end of it, you're going to want to think that you did whatever you did for the right reasons. They may not have always been successful. I call integrity, it's like a prime number. It's irreducible. It's the core of everything you're going to do in your career from beginning to end. Warren Buffett said, I look for people who have integrity, intelligence, and energy. If they don't have the first one, the last two will kill you. And what you read about are people that are just like that. So I'll tell you that in careers, the ones that get derailed, that get sidetracked, that get into the dumpster are really those that somewhere along the way they lost that integrity of how they pursued their careers, of how they did their jobs. And it's not just, you know, it's not easy just to say that somebody who's not honest in their profession can be honest in their person. It's rare that those things aren't going on. And again, these people got away from the thread of who they really are, because that's what central integrity is really about. So just know that when you get to 60, like I am, and you've worked for 35 years, your whole life and your career will be, as T.S. Eliot said, beyond the purposes you figured. Just know that. But you got to start somewhere. And I wish you all the best of luck in starting well. So.
Who would like to start well with a question? Yes.
Yep.
So very early on in what you said to us, you said that you kind of switched to when you're doing searches using LinkedIn.
Yep.
Would you say that like you use that like as your sole source of finding people, and if so, like how important is that for someone who wants to start a career to have that, like LinkedIn specifically, or like do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, here the LinkedIn becomes the more meaty your resume, the more you've done, the more LinkedIn can be helpful to you. But your question was how many searches do we fill? The truth is, there are 4 major firms in the world: Spencer Stewart, Russell Reynolds, Korn Ferry, and Heidrick & Struggles. And I was with 2 of them. And we used to have databases, and they all have databases. But what they won't tell you is that most of their searches are really filled through LinkedIn. But not everybody. But here's the trick. The trick is, a lot of people don't put themselves on LinkedIn. They don't want to, particularly, if you've been really successful. You don't need to be on LinkedIn. Is my point. But as a young person, I think that that is one node of beginning to create community. And so it isn't going to hurt you to do it. There was a thing that happened a few years ago on a candidate, something about their Facebook site, and they got, you guys know about that, the danger of not being careful with that. I saw it hurt somebody in the course of a search, frankly. I talked to one young guy who said the first thing the employer said in the interview was punch up your Facebook site. I want to see it. So while LinkedIn is very important, it's a way of organizing and sorting the world that's probably more useful to people mid-career than it is to students. But I think, you tell me, but the sort of Facebook-like, I just find people navigate. I can just say, like our son, he's got to go to he's a 2007 grad, and he's got to go to work in San Francisco because he has a relationship out there next year. He doesn't know anybody in San Francisco. It's been that community that's established is through his Facebook and other networks is incredible what it's generating in terms of opportunity. So that's how I answer that. God, oh, yes.
So there's been a recent article from the Huffington Post about Generation Y kids and like their views in like the college search and how a lot of them are dissatisfied because like for a lot of their lives they've been told you're special, go follow all your dreams, go look for the best job you get. You can get everything
Right.
you want if you try hard enough. Do you see that a lot when you're like interviewing them? What's your opinion on that?
Well, there's among people in my business, there's a sense that generation, and maybe the one right on top of it, kind of wants it all now, and there's this concept of not wanting to pay a price and wanting to have it right away. But I think that the parallel for me is, again, it's the analog to digital. The digital aspect of our society speeds everything up. I mean, it speeds your interactions up, it speeds perception, and why wouldn't it be true that it speeds up your desires in terms of what you want more quickly? And so it is more common. And the biggest complaint I hear about young people in the marketplace that are like in there is they want to be the boss on day one, and they don't want to pay any price. Now that's not everybody, but it is a difference than from when I got out of school, when if you had a job and you were told to do something, you just did it. You didn't really think 10 steps ahead. You just kind of wanted to do that job and do it well, hoping you would be noticed, and then moved ahead. Again, it gets back to humility. I tell you, you'll see it. The most striking people you'll meet are people that are utterly successful and utterly humble as people, and that goes from the beginning of your career to the end. Yes.
So you're one of the first people to say that when you go to interview, you try to be yourself. People think you advise you to sort of try to play the role or something like that. In your interviews, is that generally how?
So your question is, should you try and be yourself in an interview? Yes, I think you should, because it's never worked for me to be somebody else. I can never pull that off for very long. Here's another problem, is that I tell people at the end of a search, when they've got the final candidate and they're about to take the job, I said, one more thing. You need to make sure that you can do this job. You've sold yourself into it, the client loves you, and we've done all that, so it's your job to have. Just make sure that the idea is to make sure you've been yourself and not somebody you pretended to be, because at the end of the day, you lose. And I think you always lose when you're not yourself. And it's very awkward to see people fumbling around when they're not being who they are. First thing I try and do in my interviews is put people at ease, and I'm very casual, and whether the person's 25 or they're 65. But I would never err from being who you are. Some people are afraid they're not going to light up the room in the interview. They're afraid they're too dull, or they don't have a great story, or whatever. But hey, all I can tell you is those people that are really out there, when the really young people that are really out there and flashy and a lot of pizzazz, they're smart, they're a little scary. You want to make sure, one of our expressions, you want to make sure what you're buying. So you tell clients, you're going to hire this person, but let's just make sure that what you think you're getting is what you're actually getting. Oh, are you on? Okay. So,
Is that your time? timekeeper, I can weld and arrow is on.
One more question,
Well,
yeah.
I guess maybe just about awkward career phases, maybe ruminating a bit about
Yeah.
the time in big tobacco society or something.
Oh, yeah, that. Well, okay, quick story. So I told you, I was pre-med, pre-law, pre-everything. I went to business school, and when I was at business school, I was kind of bored. First of all, I was a political science major at a school that was full of quants, University of Chicago. But right across the quad was the divinity school, which is very well known at the U of C. And I was the only MBA to have a minor in divinity the year I graduated, because I got more out of that. And that was a little awkward. And then we went to Winston-Salem, and I was this admissions director and placement director. And my wife was a nurse, and at one point in oncology and ER. Anyway, after the admissions director, I went and took a job as a marketing assistant for unfiltered Camel cigarettes.
Unfiltered chemicals.
Now, you want to go to a party and somebody says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" "Oh, I market unfiltered Camel cigarettes." And my wife is in the oncology ward as a nurse. So at some point, that got very awkward. And I couldn't see a path for myself in that, and I went and did something else. But, I learned an amazing, that was interesting because they said, the line was, look, somebody's going to sell the cigarettes. We sell to consenting adults. So just do what you're going to do. And, but what happened to me was one of the guys cracked up, one of these marketing guys, and they sent him away. He came back. He was in charge of long-term market research. Anyway, in 2 hours, short story, one Friday afternoon in his office, he basically showed me what these companies really do, and the reality is they were marketing cigarettes to the next 4-pack-a-day smokers, which are 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. So those are pretty awkward sequences, and those continued. The moments of awkwardness haven't stopped. Hopefully they'll get fewer, but you learn from those pauses. So anyway, let me.
Yeah, Valerie, yes, definitely.
So-
Thank you. We have questions that you could write down too, remember? If we need to make
And by the way, I will give you all my email. Email me, and I'd be glad to talk to any of you by phone if you have questions. I offer myself up free of charge as your career counselor. But advice always worth what it cost you.
You want to just put it
Oh,
on the
yeah,
board?
yeah, yeah.
You can, if you were, if you, Mike,
Well,
if you want to
it's-
do that,
it's
I mean,
Mike.
I'm not gonna hold you back here, but
So
be
Mike.Kirkman.
prepared. I know these students, they will call you.
Yep, that's
Oh,
good.
no, they will write you.
Mike.Kirkman at Lachlan Partners, LOCHLIN, partners, all one word, .com. So,
You want to repeat that again?
yeah, Mike.Kirkman at LachlanPartners.com.
Yes, LOCHLIN.
Yeah, and you have our website, and it's all in there anyway.